Many jazz musicians love and admire the masters of polyphonic style of Johann Sebastian Bach. Despite the fact that he created his music 3 centuries ago during dominance of Baroque period in music history, his composition style was driven by the uncommon for his time attitudes and approaches, differing from the mainstream trends. In fact, his courage for experimentation and ingenuity is emblematic of the approach of today's jazz musicians, including his innovative employment of harmony, tonality, rhythm, improvisatory nature of many of his compositions. And the emotional complexity of his musical expression was also unfit to the conventional detachment from emotional reality, differing from the superficial Baroque style of composing music that served the aims of the ruling regime of monarchy based on institutionalized cognitive dissonance. However, even those jazz musicians who are familiar with these aspects of Bach music are in for the great surprise, featured in the new ebook by Rosalina Gutman titled Paradox of Invisible Dissonance in Fugue Parody by J.S. Bach, that features observed widespread collectively shared failure in reading notation, pertaining to left undetected in didactic aids references and reflections for band, yet defiantly employed by Bach dissonance along with its humorous meaning. Readers' examination of these significant discrepancies in the tiny fugue composed in the style of parody lead to the riveting conclusions from the observed collective perception phenomenon, allowing for the broader shift in perception of Bach's legacy through overcoming false stereotypes for interpretation of his polyphonic approach. It is the result of no composer's detailed expression marks, common for Baroque music, due to unfair proprietary rights on music by employers, interfering with sharing of music scores outside of their castles. The author Rosalina Gutman graciously shared her scaffolding guide for assisting the readers to observe the facts of the collective perceptual blind spot that paradoxically made invisible, defiantly emboldened by Bach dissonance despite the ban on its use. The author had been internationally recognized for fostering prodigious success in young students, in opposition to the low educational standards, while promoting various types of authentic self-expression. And her unique perspective of the hands-on piano instructor helps to fill in the gap in the existing Bach scholarship. In fact, this glance through her professional experience allowed for her natural resonance to the teaching duties of her colleague extraordinaire Bach, that significantly informed his compositional mindset of genius polyphony master and often inspired his compositional ideas by his students' educational needs for his didactic scaffolding. This lacking perspective in Bach scholarship is the key reason why her rather sensational discoveries in related to Bach subjects break the widespread yet false stereotypical assumption that discovering something new in his music is as impossible as finding an error in the multiplication table. Contrary, right from the opening of the introductory segment, as long as the readers could identify cluster chords in music score with provided scaffolding highlights, they'd easily grasp the absence of the mere mention in most. Analysis publications of this band during Bach's time and employed defiantly compositional device. And then examination of the similar lack of recognition of emboldened dissonance with grotesque humor meaning in many iconic recordings even more staggering, especially considering the fact that they are often used as didactic references by many students. Readers can also easily observe that this evident through a simple glimpse at the score perceptual phenomenon of conformity-driven blind spot had been influenced by the tradition of political correctness. And another logical conclusion from this allows to recognize the warped constructs of many other aspects of Bach's legacy beyond the examined fugue. This publication guides readers through the examination of the composer's mastery of creating unique teaching tool for self-reflection on their capacity for sober self-assessment. And Bach's use of humor allows to cut through the learning curve of the unusual type, the false stereotypes, acting as learning obstacles. The unearthed from oblivion, emboldened with syncopation and left unresolved dissonant sonorities naturally propel the sense of surprise that triggers natural response of laughter to these sonic metaphors of musical humor. Indeed, such uncommon and risky use of compositional devices in music of Bach should have been known to everyone from spotlights in all textbooks, as the precursors of jazz and contemporary style, but instead had been paradoxically left out of many common guides for its interpretation. And this significant discrepancy is one of the reasons for the didactic update on teaching approaches to Bach, beyond the tradition of politically correct distortions of his legacy that led to the global spread of college discourse, including false educational standard for confining performers of his music with the hazardous for health emotional repression. Bach's use of dissonance is one of his amazing innovations among compositional devices that had become a part of his compositional signature and distinguished the style of Bach from the majority of his contemporaries. But this innovation, through defiance of dogmatic rules, caused a lot of troubles to the rebel composer, with neuroscientists' mindset for breaking the senseless rules of dogma in composition of his historical period. His subversion of conventional composition rules, combined with his elevation of polyphonic complexity, made his music to stand out among contemporary musicians, as well as gave the reason for his prolific fluency in polyphonic technique to outlive his physical existence. And his didactic mastery continues to serve as the exemplary stellar and the cornerstone for educational materials in music education during our time. This ebook helps readers in understanding the facts evident of Bach's use of emboldened dissonance for creating musical parody with expression of satire in his fugue that he included into his didactic cycle of well-tempered clavier. It also makes evident the fact that such unconventional for his time tools of composition were part of his teaching that involved introduction of his students to these innovations with pivotal changes for music history. This unconventional ebook shares Rosalina Gutman's user manual to enable readers' enjoyment of the intellectual delights of this fugue that allow it to serve as the laughter test, created by Bach for training his own students to achieve dynamically engaging and emotionally resonant to his humor performance. Jazz pianists, along with classically trained musicians, may find very inspiring offered by her Secret of the Trade for the technique of effective manifestation of Bach's notation by creating the memorable splashes with dissonant chords in their performances and recordings. The liner notes about this unique creation can introduce the audiences to the unique ability of this fugue to serve as the container to help deflate and overcome ill pride and paralysis of self-defeating resentment to change with sobering music humor. Bach's musical jokes allow for the instant, fun-based and satisfying with joy, authentic engagement with his genuine humor metaphors. They invite music imagination to visualize role-playing in the format of self-deprecating comedy of absurd, allowing to unclench the fists from the fear-driven mind paralysis and restore lost clarity over self-defeating confusion. And this achieved by Bach's capacity of music to ease and to optimize the learning process is precious and truly incomparable. However, one of the most beneficial impacts from learning to perform this fugue parody, both for classical and jazz pianists, is the development of the technique for dynamically nuanced performance. In fact, this piece is composed as the perfect scaffolding in such a way that makes impossible to deliver the surprise of each appearance of dissonant sonorities without using dynamic emphasis due to involved syncopation. This skill allows for expansion of performers' emotional resonance that in turn transmits instant impulse to the audience for imagining their own authentic associations with the humorous buildup and created by Bach's sonic scenery. Such fun and engaging for the audiences of all ages piece is certain to draw new diehard fans when it is included into the stage and recorded performances, as well as into curriculum. Unearthing of this fugue made evident that polyphonic technique's mastery was only the tool for Bach for intuitive expression through music of the emotional resonance to the feelings of Bach's audiences. All of his composition efforts were ruled by the focus on the uncommon for his time's supreme goal of increasing emotional resonance of his music, leading to profound transformative impacts for elevating consciousness. This aspect of teaching informed his approach to composition, among other related to cognitive development insights that mentoring and coaching affords to the instructors and counselors through observations of the impacts of music curriculum on advancing brain function. and the unique design of the reviewed fugue parody that has special features of the container for self-reflection and self-mastery through music embodiment, enables learning of the indispensable self-perception skills. And in addition to these dissonance-related discoveries that add joy and fun to music routines, another reason why Bach's music appeals to jazz musicians is his sense of similar adventurous treatment of harmonic color palette and ingenuity in his use of harmonic modulations used for increasing emotional resonance. In fact, he expanded these concepts in his iconic cycle of preludes and fugues in all 24 keys, titled Well-Tempered Clavier. In fact, most of classically trained musicians don't realize that Bach's experimentations in the harmonic language belong more to jazz style than to the ruled by dogma conventional style of Baroque period. Contrary, they were manifested by Bach as the result of his tremendous risk-taking and personal sacrifice by the innovative composer, unwilling to conform to the senseless limitations of dogma. That is why classically trained musicians can benefit from the expansion of their horizons by using similar to Bach's adventurous attitude and approaches to music common for jazz. And they may be pleasantly surprised by the emotionally satisfying outcomes from emotional infusion of Bach, that at the same time could be the most effective ways to explore new depths of polyphonic texture while achieving better clarity of voicing that innovative master teacher could achieve on the emerging hammer clavier, such as Silbermann's fortepiano. Yes, this fact of Bach's biography had been kept unknown to most of musicians, paradoxically underpublicized and withheld from most textbooks. That's the reason why the author included the archival record of signed by Bach receipt for selling one of such emerging fortepianos. The limited amount of evidence about this Bach's hands-on involvement documents had been turned into the excuse for making Bach obligated to provide written proof for his riveting innovations, such as satirical dissonance metaphors in this fugue, that his music scholars are either unable or unwilling to grasp in the notation. Perhaps it is due to the common among Bach scholars blind spot about piano instructors' hard work on helping students to develop very dynamic touch necessary for delivery of the complex polyphonic texture that demands for voicing clarity intended by Bach. That is why these distinctions of his style from most of his contemporaries had brought up a lot of discussions about his music legacy, creating college discourse on the contrary to any logic, the paradoxically unfitting Bach's music requirement to treat Bach's music with just the opposite approach, with emotional confinement, making such pathological tradition of political correctness laughable due to its cognitive dissonance. And this liberated from distortions, fugue parody delivers indisputable evidence for the true core nature of Bach's compositional pursuits. While this may represent inconvenient truth, demanding for the change from common tradition of indoctrination of beginning music students into common for Baroque music, the students deserve to be free from the requirement for hazardous emotional repression, and the duty of every music instructor to assure for the prevention of the wired patterns of double standard from becoming normality should be declared by the organizations charged with establishing and maintaining the pedagogical standards in music education. The provided scaffolding in this uniquely written ebook allows to witness the pitiful results from the impacts of the multi-generational culture of moral atrocity manifesting into the staggering collective cognitive failure that readers should examine. On the positive note, the observed link of emotional repression and zombification that evidently disrupted cognitive clarity allowed for deeper understanding of self-defeat mechanisms of human psyche, missing in past textbook classic studies. During youth, they also became the victim of this collectively shared error among many musicians, including acclaimed recording artists and authors of analysis publications. And in addition to making the alert for missing references to defiant use of dissonance and relevant humorous meaning, Rosalina Gutman made the effort to share her empirical self-reflection on the process of her surprising recovery from the affliction by the collective blind spot. It helps students and colleagues to stay vigilant against self-defeating maladaptive conformity to groupthink and authority pressure, and to develop resilience to the subliminal sociosomatic response to the pressure of social influences used for manipulation to engage into harmful and self-defeating actions, easily accomplished through misuse of trust to unethical figures in authority positions. Notably, thanks to emotional infusion of Bach's polyphony, the author engaged with emotionally and analytically balanced polyphony that triggered her generative eureka cognition, allowing for music-related epiphanies and for the grasp of multidisciplinary implications of observed deeper understanding of sociosomatics in the classic textbook concepts of social influences, suggesting tangible benefits from mining more of sensory-augmented data based on liberated from distortion Bach's music to continue observations of these paradoxical responses of the social human brain, with added significant depth understanding to the classic concepts of social influences in studies for Ash, Milgram, Lucifer effects. The overview of these subjects for collaborative exploration, along with multidisciplinary studies on the urgent global impacts of prevention of millions of human deaths, had been provided in the PowerPoint video made by Rosalina Gutman upon request of the Chair of Research Commission Seminar, part of 35th World Conference of International Society for Music Education, stressing the need for leadership to set up exemplary attitude of no business as usual for addressing the need for the global shift of consciousness from the current self-defeat pattern through harnessing music instinct for applied uses of superb and finally unearthed Bach's teaching aid to help resolve common and indiscriminate of leadership, cognitive dissonance, and to advance brain function. Additional in-depth studies on discovered Bach sensory deactivation effect are to reveal the best applications of Bach's truly incomparable tool for restoring interhemispheric balance of the brain, heart-to-brain communication, synergy of conscious and unconscious mind, promoting development of integrative cognition, among many other benefits that revealed its creator's mindset of neuroscientist. Notably, the reviewed fugue parody is linked to these very dramatic for him events, since it was included by him into this didactic cycle, serving as a part of Bach's jail diary. Bach's own musical rebellion through music jokes refuted such false musical stereotypes of his historical period, and it carried deep symbolism of subversion of the flawed dogma that sustained the very foundations of the innately flawed regime of the senseless monarchy and its power structures, that enforced the dominance of provincial mindset of castle towns presided by the elite with amassed wealth instead of the true intellectual leadership. But despite the noble intentions of the advocate for humanity, genius innovator ended up among the victims of vicious retaliation to his promotion of positive change. He lived his life suffering from persecution as the prisoner of conscience, having to endure brutal, lifelong witch hunt by character assassination that was concocted as the result of unfair stigma of convict due to the false imprisonment. No, Bach didn't commit any crime, but instead he became the victim of the crime of the false incrimination, while he had no money to hire legal defense from the dire human rights violations. This, known to his harasser's vulnerability, was enabled by the shocking systemic injustice to the profession of musician. The moral indignation and protest of Bach in the form of the notice of leave to his employer was due the employer's refusal to pay decent wages to musicians, including timeless genius. And in addition, Duke of Weimar installed mediocre supervisor over Bach to censor music of genius composer, making the atmosphere of dictatorial rule intolerable for creativity. However, in hopes to avoid the shame for his moral atrocity, Duke set out to pull off the scam by assassinating the character of the innocent, yet vulnerable by impoverishment, thus prisoner of conscience. Along with his cronies, Duke instigated false imprisonment of innocent musician. And this blunt violation of human rights of this genius advocate for humanity was the crime, left with no prosecution and even with no a mere apology. And just like millions of other musicians of the past and present, Bach was the easy target of criminal minds, since genius was too poor to afford effective legal defense from false accusations. Among the majority of other musicians, he was persecuted by the marginalization and undervaluation and undignifying underpayment. But Bach defied his harasser's power abuse. He decided to use his imprisonment in order to set the record and demonstrate his outstanding composition ability. While under false confinement that prevented his access to any musical instruments, he conceived one of his most popular compositions, Book One of Well-Tempered Clavier, containing some of the most complex polyphonic texture, sophisticated beauty, and metaphorical symbolism, making it very distinct from most of his contemporaries. Later on, the son of his student Gerber included this record-setting accomplishment of Bach into the encyclopedia-type publication that circulated throughout various countries in the translated in several languages editions. But politically correct excusology deleted inconvenient truth from Bach's legacy. Paradoxically, and contrary to pressing professional needs of all musicians, while also misleading their fans, students, and affecting collective consciousness of humanity. Such institutionalized cognitive dissonance led to the betrayal of Bach's core focus of his life and significantly impacted interpretation of his music. All students of Bach's scores deserve to share the laughter with Bach, allowing audiences to enjoy the rediscovered satirical musical joke of Bach as well. This Bach's reminder of the combined power of camaraderie helps rekindle the flame of Bach's torch, and it is of critical importance in the battle of the minds when the primitive mindset has become emboldened to overpower the rise of integrative consciousness that is based on the whole brain, holistic function. These subjects demand for the urgent didactic update on teaching approaches to Bach, propelling college discourse growing worldwide as more and more music educators and students get involved into the subjects of this important for all musicians publication. And now, in celebration of collegiate camaraderie, the instant download of PDF file of this ebook is available at 25% discount during limited time of book launch. See details in introduction for YouTube channel. Please remember to share feedback and testimonials to show camaraderie with the cause initiated by Bach, and add the name of own publication or project to feature it among the global family of Bach's fans. Also, you can join ambassadors for international campaign Liberate Bach via dedicated tab on the related to this book site for paradoxofinvisibledissonance.com, and also learn about special benefits for sharing this global cause with the worldwide community of musicians. Share this link to information all musicians deserve to know about initiated by Bach and important for all musicians cause, led by the timeless heart-centered intellectual leadership of this master music instructor with neuroscientists' approach to innovation in composing teaching scaffolding.